It's game day for the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Brandin Cooks is out the door, and it's time for one wide receiver to step up. We'll be talking about that and so much more today on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome everyone to a brand new edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. If you haven't already, highly recommend you subscribe to us however you get your podcast, be it through Spotify, Amazon podcasts, even YouTube. Go ahead and search us today, Louisiana Lunch Hour, and tell your friends about us as well. Because it's time to get into what's going on in the world of sports on a 3-and-out Thursday. And we'll start things off with a game that is going on tonight, and that is the Louisiana Raging Cajuns taking on Arkansas State. It's an absolutely crucial game for the Cajuns to win, mainly because if they don't, they're more likely than not going to be on the outside looking in when it comes to getting a bowl game in 2025. They're 2.5-point dogs in the contest. If this were a neutral site game, this would definitely be a pick 'em. And I think it's mainly because the Cajuns are without so many players. And it's not due to injuries at all. It's more because of the brouhaha that happened after the Texas State game that resulted in several players getting suspended, and a lot of them being in the secondary. This is going to be one of those teams, one of those games you absolutely need to have these guys available. And not having them there, and some of them we talked about a lot after it happened, the suspensions were at least somewhat justified, but still, you cannot have that. The Cajuns last year beat the Red Wolves 55-19, and it's been, again, relatively one-sided over the last few years because Arkansas State has not been all that great over the last couple of years. Yes, the Cajuns lost in 2023, 37-17, but you go back to, the tail end of the Hudspeth era where that Cajuns team did not look great at all. When you go back to the last 10 years, Arkansas State has only won 3 times in the last 10 meetings. That's not a good look, and it's always a 12-round dogfight. I can remember that 2018 game, the first year of Billy Napier. That was kind of the determining factor for the Cajuns to get into the Sun Belt Championship game. They survived that one. But these two teams are on very different trajectories. Let me go ahead and slow myself down. The Cajuns have been a little bit inconsistent, but they've started to kind of fix themselves. Mind you, again, you're playing against teams that are more towards middle of the pack rather than top flight teams in this tail end of the season. They got through Southern Miss. They barely survived Marshall. They had to play James Madison, a really good team, and they kept it competitive. Southern Miss kept it competitive, but you lost that one. Not necessarily as competitive against Troy, but then you're playing South Alabama, Texas State, Arkansas State, and UL Monroe to close out the season. Those are a South Alabama, Texas State, UL Monroe, they're towards the bottom of the division. You're firmly in the middle, and now you're playing the second best team in the conference, but the bar isn't necessarily that high. The difference isn't that high. Because Arkansas State's 4-2, Cajuns are 3-3 in the conference, 4-6 overall compared to 5-5 for Arkansas State. I think simply because of what's happened with this Cajuns team, losing a lot of key players. I think that's the first thing that I can say is losing the secondary is going to hurt a lot, especially with the fact that Arkansas State has been pretty decent with the passing game. Last week, they threw 337 yards, and that's against a very good Southern Miss squad. Again, that's pretty much Marshall from last year, the defending and reigning Sun Belt Conference champions. Can we see Southern Miss potentially win that championship? that remains to be seen. More likely than not, they'll be playing a very good JMU team who's trying to fight for a spot in the CFP. This is going to be a game that I think the Cajuns are, as much as I would love to say this Cajuns team wins, keeps it competitive, I think they keep it competitive, but I do not believe they win. It's more just because of how I've seen this team perform over the course of the season. And especially without a lot of those key players in the secondary, that's going to play a huge factor, because the Red Wolves have been pretty good through the air, and doing that against a competitive Southern Miss, it's going to be a whole hell of a lot of fun to see how this game goes. Can't wait to watch it tonight. It's going to be a really fun ball game. So make sure, if you are a fan of the Cajuns, just a fan of college football in general, and want an alternative to Thursday night football, definitely go ahead and check out that one on ESPN. Kickoff for the contest is going to be at 6:30. And don't you worry, we'll recap and that and so much more on the Friday pod. Kind of had to take a little bit of a break from doing the Friday podcast, is what it is. But we're getting right back into it. And I want to flip the conversation over because this was interesting, kind of like in an hour time span, there were rumors popping up that John Sumrall was going to be meeting with the Florida Gators. And it feels like, they're doing their due diligence, trying to make sure they get somebody in place. Because if you're Florida, you've got to have plan B in place. Which honestly, it's kind of funny in a way. Because you go back to the last time LSU and Florida were looking for a head coach. It was back in 2021. LSU wound up getting a flashy name, and Florida wound up opting for more of a safety school pick and picking one of the guys and one of the hot head coaches from the state of Louisiana, namely one Billy Napier. Now, when I saw this pop up, it's kind of funny, where obviously Lane Kiffin's been a hotly contested name, and many fans believe that he's going to make the jump over to LSU from the Grove out in Ole Miss, out in Oxford, and go over to Gainesville. Some people think that. Some people, especially in this camp, firmly believe that he's going to LSU, and it's only a matter of time, because why wouldn't you want to coach at LSU? That's kind of the viewpoint many people have about the job. Me, I don't necessarily believe that, because I feel like there's going to be a lot more money to take if you're Florida. You've got a lot more opportunities to give him what he wants, and also a good chunk of money. So I'm excited to see how this all pans out over the next couple days. But John Sumrall kind of said, hey, there were rumors and reports coming out that Florida was going to meet with John Sumrall about the coaching vacancy. And then about like an hour later, Pete Nakos winds up tweeting that the scheduled meeting with John Sumrall has been called off, and Sumrall is moving on from and removing his name from being in the mix for the coaching search, which is a bold move. And it also kind of makes you think, is Lane Kiffin already in the boat at this point? It's going to be the name that everybody's going to be talking about, and the story that a lot of people are going to be getting into heading into the big Egg Bowl game to wrap up the regular season for Ole Miss, as they are looking towards a college football playoff berth for the first time in program history. They have a chance to do that, but they have to actually get there first. And I firmly believe that this Florida team, this Florida program, wants to get this guy in there. And if you're LSU, you miss out on this opportunity to get Lane Kiffin, to get the Lane train to come on over. I have a bad feeling things aren't going to get much better in the not too distant future. because the names that are out there after this, and it's not even a knock. This isn't a knock against, guys like Kenny Dillingham, who I think could be a great pickup. But the fact that you don't get the number one again to come over to your program, it's a bit of a bad look if we're being completely and utterly honest with each other. He's part of Florida Atlantic in 2019, then jumped over to Ole Miss in 2020. There was a chance where you were thinking about probably getting Lane Kiffin. He stuck around. He decided to stay with the program that he was trying to rebuild, and it paid off in spades. Now you sit here, it's almost a case of deja vu. Can you get him to make that jump over? Or is he too loyal towards the job at Ole Miss and wants to continue to build this thing because he's seeing that he can do this very, very well? That's the true intrigue in all of this, is can he continue to build? Can he continue to exceed expectations? That's just how I see things right now. Can he continue to exceed expectations for an Ole Miss program with what he's done over the last few years? Can he keep up in the world of the SEC, and more importantly, keep up with the Joneses with the world of NIL? That's going to be the real intrigue there. And we'll wrap up today's podcast, flip it over to the New Orleans Saints, because Brandin Cooks decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and head out. This isn't necessarily working for me, and renegotiated his contract, and he is out the door. This kind of came from New Orleans football first. It was definitely kind of a weird surprise that he asked for his release, and they gave him his opportunity to go on waivers. And if he goes unclaimed, he'll be a free agent from there. And the Saints signed Kevin Austin Jr. off their practice squad in the corresponding move. Cooks had signed a $13 million deal for 2 years back in March, but just did not turn out all that well. He was fifth in the team in receptions in the first half of the season. And now that you get to the second half of the season, there is a big focus towards who's going to take his spot, who's going to fill that gap. And I think without a doubt in my mind, Devaughn Vele needs to be that guy. It is well past time for that young man to step up. He has not performed as well as maybe we thought he should have, right? This is a young man come from the Denver Broncos. You traded for him and you gave up something for this guy. And I have not seen a whole hell of a lot out of him that makes it feel like he's 6 receptions, right? 6 receptions off of 13 targets compared to what he got last year over in Denver. 55 targets, 41 receptions. And he's only played in 9 games. 9 games. He's had significantly less opportunities and significantly less touches. And I'm not expecting him to become like a wide receiver 1, because obviously Chris Olave is that guy. He's probably re-signed to a pretty decent contract, but he's got to prove himself. And especially Devaughn Vele. He's got to prove himself in a big way, because you gave up opportunities. And if you are a person that's focused on waiver wires and stuff like that on a Thursday morning, I definitely feel like you should at least give him an opportunity to be on your roster if you need to fill a body somewhere, some way with this team. I think Devaughn could be that guy that fills the void, and it's past time for him to actually step up in my heart of hearts. But that'll about do it for today's edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe today to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast, and also tell a friend about it. If they're a fan of Louisiana sports, this is the place to be. We get you in and out in 30 minutes or less. So we'll talk to you tomorrow. Get you ready for a big old weekend on a Friday. So till then, talk to you later.